My name is Elise Morgan. I am 35 years old, and for most of my life I believed the worst thing my older sister could do was act like I was furniture in my own family. I was wrong. At the Morgan family reunion last July, Vanessa waited until every aunt, cousin, and board member had taken a seat beneath the white tent before she crossed the lawn with a cream-colored folder in her hand. She looked beautiful in the way expensive people look beautiful when they know an audience is watching. Her hair was pinned back. Her smile was calm. Her husband, Todd, stood near the bar with his phone already raised, as if he knew there would be a performance worth recording. Vanessa stopped at my chair and dropped the folder in front of my plate. A DNA report slid halfway out. "Maybe now everyone will understand why you never fit here," she said. The conversation stopped. My mother stared at her glass of iced tea. My cousins leaned in. My aunt covered her mouth. Vanessa looked at me as if she had finally found the sentence she had been saving since childhood. "You're another man's mistake." Nobody corrected her. Not my mother, not my uncle, not the people who had eaten my father's barbecue, borrowed money from his business, sat at his funeral, and told me he would have been proud of the woman I became. I picked up the report and read the line Vanessa had circled in red. No biological paternal relationship detected. Vanessa expected me to cry. She expected me to deny it, scream at my mother, or run from the tent while everyone whispered behind my back. She had built the moment for humiliation. She wanted the family to watch me become less than them. Instead, I folded the report back into the folder and smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that appears when pain suddenly connects to information. Vanessa blinked. She had not expected calm. What she did not know was that I worked in bank compliance and medical privacy audits. She also did not know that the tiny accession number printed on the bottom of the DNA report identified the testing package as one ordered through a restricted medical archive, not a voluntary consumer kit. And she definitely did not know that my father, Samuel Morgan, had left a sealed instruction for exactly the kind of attack she had just made. I stood up slowly. "Thank you, Vanessa," I said. Her smile faltered. "For what?" "For putting this in writing." Then I walked out of the tent. 7 days later, before sunrise, my father's estate attorney called me while I was still in bed. Her name was Miriam Cho, and in 14 years of knowing her, I had never heard her sound rushed. "Elise," she said, "I need you at the Harbor House within the hour. Vanessa's attorney filed a paternity challenge overnight, and it triggered a sealed provision in Samuel's trust." I sat up so quickly my lamp rattled. "What kind of provision?" There was a pause. "The kind that freezes her distributions?" My throat went dry. "And?" Miriam exhaled. "And orders an immediate forensic audit of the Morgan family fund." That was the moment I realized Vanessa had not thrown a DNA test at me because she wanted truth. She had thrown it because she was afraid of what I might find. Before I tell you what my father left behind, what the full DNA file really showed, and how my sister's plan collapsed in the room where she thought she had erased me, tell me what time it is where you are and where you are watching from. I always wonder how far a story can travel when one person mistakes silence for weakness. My father, Samuel Morgan, was not loud. He did not dominate rooms. He did not need to. He had built Morgan Harbor properties from one broken marina office, 2 rental cottages, and a stubborn belief that if you wrote every agreement clearly enough, fewer people could lie later. He owned apartment buildings near the river, 3 small commercial lots, a family lodge on Lake Rowan, and a charitable fund that paid trade school tuition for teenagers aging out of foster care. When I was little, he taught me to count boat keys by color, file receipts by month, and check every total twice. "Numbers don't get offended when you question them," he used to say. "People do. That tells you where to look." Vanessa hated that sentence. She was 6 years older than me and believed attention was a limited family resource. If Dad praised my grades, she said I was trying too hard. If he asked me to help with invoices, she said I was his little clerk. If he gave me a seat at the office table, She said I was too young to understand real family business. My mother, Ruth, rarely stopped her. Ruth Morgan had survived most of her life by keeping beautiful rooms beautiful. She arranged flowers, smoothed tablecloths, remembered birthdays, and carried secrets like folded napkins tucked beneath plates. She did not like scenes. She did not like questions. She did not like sentences that could not be softened by saying, "I'm sure nobody meant it that way." By 12, I understood that family peace usually meant I had to swallow whatever Vanessa served. By 16, I understood that Dad saw more than he said. He corrected her when the lie was obvious, but he had a habit of waiting for proof before naming a pattern. When Dad got sick, everything changed. Pancreatic cancer does not politely enter a family. It walks in, turns on the lights, and shows every crack in the wall. Dad fought for 11 months. During that time, Vanessa became theatrical in her grief. She posted photos of his hands, captioned every hospital visit with family legacy, and cried loudly when nurses entered the room. I handled insurance denials, medication schedules, business continuity plans, and the financial reports Dad still wanted reviewed because work gave him something to hold. "You don't have to do this," he told me once, while I sat beside his bed with a laptop balanced on my knees. "I know," he smiled weakly. "No, you don't. That is what worries me." 3 weeks before he died, Dad asked me to drive him to Miriam Cho's office. He did not explain why. He met with Miriam alone for nearly 2 hours. When he came out, he looked exhausted, but something in his face had settled. On the drive home, he handed me a small brass token stamped with the letter M and a number, 28. "What is this?" I asked. "A reminder," he said. "Of what?" "That if someone tries to make blood the price of belonging, you should ask what they are trying to buy with the distraction." I asked if he was making one of his complicated lawyer jokes. He looked out the window. "No, I am making an apology ahead of time." He died 22 days later. After the funeral, the will was read in Miriam's office. Vanessa received a large economic share, the right to live in the renovated lake guest house for as long as she met certain conditions, and a salaried position at the Morgan Family Fund, if the independent board approved. I received equal economic benefits, but Dad gave me the deciding vote over Morgan Harbor properties and the authority to approve or deny distributions from the family fund above a certain threshold. Vanessa's face hardened when Miriam read that part. "You gave the company to Elise?" she snapped, as though Dad's chair across the table might answer. Miriam corrected her. "Your father gave Elise fiduciary control. Ownership benefits remain divided." Vanessa laughed. "Of course, he gives me money and gives her power." Todd put a hand on her shoulder and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "He always favored the useful one." I let it pass. That was my mistake. Not because their opinion mattered, but because silence taught them they could keep enlarging the lie. Over the next 18 months, Vanessa treated every financial control like a personal insult. She wanted larger foundation budgets for community visibility. She hired consultants without clear deliverables. She pushed to renovate the guest house at trust expense because family representatives need to host donors properly. She asked for advances on her distribution, then called me rigid when I requested documentation. Most of it was irritating, not explosive. Then I noticed the Harbor Youth Fund. The fund was supposed to provide tuition, deposits, and emergency grants for young adults leaving foster care. Dad loved it because it was practical. No gala speeches, no vague inspiration. A plumber's apprentice needed tools. The fund paid the supplier. A nursing student needed a deposit for an apartment. The fund paid the landlord. Dad believed dignity was easier to preserve when help arrived, before desperation turned into a performance. After his death, Vanessa became the public face of the fund. Her photos were everywhere. Vanessa at a scholarship breakfast. Vanessa with a ribbon at a housing partnership. Vanessa accepting praise for compassion she had mostly outsourced. When I reviewed quarterly statements, I found payments to a vendor called Silverline Outreach Strategies. The invoices were polished. Consulting, donor development, emergency housing coordination, community partner mapping. The language was clean in the way fake things often are. Silverline had received $2.47 million over 26 months. I asked Vanessa for project records. She said she would send them. She did not. I asked again. She accused me of sabotaging programs for vulnerable youth because I wanted to embarrass her. The morning Miriam called, I drove to the Harbor House with the folder on the passenger seat. The Harbor House was Dad's favorite property, a gray cedar building overlooking the marina where Morgan Harbor Properties had begun. He had converted the upstairs into offices and kept the downstairs parlor mostly unchanged, with maps, old ledgers, and framed photographs of the first cottages he ever repaired. Miriam was already there when I arrived. So was my mother. Ruth sat in Dad's old leather chair with a tissue twisted around her fingers. She looked like she had not slept in days. I felt a flash of pity, followed by anger, so old it had become muscle memory. You knew, I said. She looked at the floor. Elise, did Dad know? Her eyes filled. Yes. The word did not hurt the way I expected. Maybe because Vanessa had already cut the first wound in front of 40 relatives. Maybe because part of me had always known my life contained a locked room. Who is he? I asked. My mother closed her eyes. Miriam answered when Ruth did not. Adrian Knox, an architect from Portland. Ruth and Samuel were separated for several months before you were born. Adrian signed a legal acknowledgement, and then Samuel completed a second-parent adoption after reconciling with your mother. I gripped the back of a chair. Dad adopted me? Miriam's expression softened. Yes, privately, legally, completely. He was your father in every way recognized by law. Ruth finally looked up. He was your father in every way that mattered. I wanted to accept that sentence. I also wanted to throw it back at her. If it mattered, why was I the last person to know? She began to cry, but this time I did not move toward her. I had spent too many years mistaking tears for truth. Miriam placed a blue folder on the table. Vanessa's attorney filed a petition arguing that you should be removed from control because Samuel was not your biological father. The petition includes the DNA report, a request for emergency suspension, and a claim that your mother concealed paternity to manipulate the estate. Ruth flinched. She used me in the filing? She used everyone, Miriam said. Then she opened a sealed envelope bearing Dad's handwriting. The first page was titled, Kinship Challenge Directive. Miriam read the core paragraph aloud. If any beneficiary uses genetic testing, medical records, reproductive history, or sealed family information to humiliate, coerce, disinherit, or undermine Elise Morgan, all discretionary benefits to the challenger shall be suspended immediately. Control of Morgan Harbor Properties, the Morgan Family Fund, and all related entities shall transfer temporarily to Elise, pending independent legal and forensic review. If the challenge is connected to fraud, privacy violations, extortion, or misuse of charitable assets, the challenger's beneficial interest may be reduced or terminated according to the trustee's petition and court approval. For one breath, the room was completely silent. Then I laughed. I did not mean to. It came out once, sharp and empty. Vanessa had spent months planning a public execution and had walked straight into a legal tripwire Dad had built years before. Miriam did not smile. Her monthly distribution was frozen at midnight. Her access to the foundation accounts has been suspended. The guest house privileges are under review. We also have a second instruction. She handed me the brass token I had brought from home. Do you still have this? I placed it beside the envelope. Miriam nodded. Samuel left instructions for a vault at Monarch Private Storage, Box 28. He said you would know when to open it. Inside was a black binder, a hard drive, 2 envelopes, and a smaller sealed packet addressed to me. The first envelope contained Dad's recorded statement. Miriam played it in a private viewing room. Dad appeared on screen thinner than he had been when I wanted to remember him, but his eyes were clear. Elise, he said, if you are watching this, then someone chose blood as a weapon. I am sorry you are learning the truth in pain instead of trust. My hands folded together in my lap. He explained everything my mother had failed to tell me. He said he knew about Adrian before I was born, that he had chosen to stay, chosen to sign, chosen to raise me, and chosen to protect the fact that love should not have to defend itself against biology. You were not the result of my ignorance, he said. You were the result of my decision. I chose you every day after I knew the truth. That is not lesser fatherhood. That is fatherhood with its eyes open. My mother sobbed quietly. I did not look at her. Dad continued. Vanessa has always believed inheritance is proof of rank. I watched that belief harden, and I did not stop it early enough. That failure is mine. In the last year of my life, I found irregular payments connected to the Morgan family fund. I could not prove the entire path before illness took too much from me. But I believe Vanessa and Todd are using charitable money through a vendor named Silverline Outreach Strategies. If Vanessa uses your paternity to attack you, assume it is because she needs you removed before you examine Silverline. Miriam paused the video. I looked at the black binder. Silverline was written on the spine. Dad had known. He had not only known about my paternity, he had known my sister's cruelty would eventually reveal her motive. The binder contained a timeline of payments, copies of board approvals, handwritten notes, and the names of people Dad had quietly contacted. He had circled 3 transfers totaling $680,000 and written one question beside them. Where did housing units go? Miriam's face tightened as she reviewed the files. This is enough to petition for a full freeze of Silverline-related accounts. My mother whispered, maybe Todd handled it. Vanessa might not know how bad it was. I turned to her. Were you in the tent when she called me another man's mistake? Ruth did not answer. Then don't ask me to protect her from words written in her own spreadsheet. The smaller packet in the vault was addressed to me alone. Inside were copies of 35 birthday letters from Adrian Knox. I read only the first line of the top one. Dear Elise, I do not know whether you will ever read this, but your life matters even from a distance. My chest hurt, not from betrayal alone, from the weight of years I had not known belonged to anyone else. Dad had kept the letters. He had not destroyed Adrian. He had preserved him. That made everything more complicated and more merciful than the lie Vanessa tried to sell. Miriam advised me not to contact Adrian until we secured evidence and reviewed his legal history. Vanessa had obtained private medical records and a DNA sample. We needed to know whether Adrian had been involved, threatened, or deceived. By noon, Miriam had hired a forensic accountant named Nia Patel. By evening, Nia had identified Silverline's registered address as a mail drop behind a nail salon in Tacoma. The company had no staff payroll, no leased office, no program licenses, and no public record of providing housing services. The managing partner was listed as Thomas Reed. Todd's full name was Todd Thomas Reed. I sat at Miriam's conference table watching the lines on Nia's transaction map branch outward like blood vessels. Foundation money to Silverline. Silverline to the guest house renovation. Silverline to Todd's credit card. Silverline to a private school tuition account. Silverline to a jewelry store in Bellevue. Silverline to a property deposit on a condo Vanessa said belonged to a donor partner. The family reunion had happened on a Saturday. By Wednesday, we had enough evidence to prove that the DNA test was not the beginning of Vanessa's plan. It was the smoke grenade she threw after the financial trail got too visible. Then the lab confirmed the privacy breach. The DNA report Vanessa threw at me was real in one limited sense. It showed Samuel Morgan was not my biological father. But the report had been ordered using a consent form containing my forged electronic signature and an old copy of my driver's license from a family medical file. The sample had likely come from a coffee cup Vanessa took from my office during a foundation board meeting. The report had been cropped before she distributed it. The full report showed that Ruth was my biological mother, and that Vanessa and I shared maternal DNA. It also included a legal disclaimer stating the results could not be used for estate or identity determinations without verified chain of custody. Vanessa had removed that page. She had not revealed truth. She had edited truth into a weapon. That same afternoon, Adrian Knox called Miriam's office after receiving a formal inquiry. He was 64, retired, and living in Astoria with his second wife. When Miriam put him on speaker, his voice was careful. "I have been waiting for this call longer than you have been alive," he said. I did not know what to say. He told us he had known about me before I was born and had signed an acknowledgement confirming paternity. Samuel had asked him not to interfere while I was a child because he and Ruth had reconciled and wanted stability. Adrian did not describe himself as noble. He said he had been young, ashamed, and too willing to believe distance was kindness. Every year, he wrote a birthday letter and mailed it to Samuel. "Your father wrote back twice," Adrian said. "He said he would not erase me, but he would not let me unsettle your childhood before you were ready." My mother began crying again. Adrian continued. "Vanessa contacted me 9 months ago." I straightened. "What did she want?" "Money." Miriam picked up a pen. "How much?" $420,000. "For what?" Adrian's breath shook. "She said Elise was ill and needed private treatment. She said Ruth was too proud to ask. Samuel's trust was tied up. And if I cared at all about the child I abandoned, I should help quietly. She sent medical documents and photos." I closed my eyes. I had undergone a minor outpatient procedure that spring to remove a benign cyst. Vanessa had visited my apartment afterward with soup and questions she pretended were concern. Adrian wired the money to Silverline Outreach Strategies because Vanessa told him it was handling confidential care coordination. He had receipts. He had emails. He had a voicemail of Vanessa saying, "Pay it this week, and Elise never has to know you left her twice." When the call ended, my mother whispered, "I didn't know about Adrian." I believed her. That did not make her innocent. "You knew Vanessa had the paternity file," I said. Ruth nodded slowly. "She found it after your father died. She told me she would keep quiet if I helped persuade you to reduce her foundation oversight. And you didn't warn me. I thought I could manage her." That sentence finally cracked something open. For years, Ruth had called her silence love. Now I could see it clearly. It was not love. It was risk management in favor of the loudest person. "You managed me," I said. "Not her." She bowed her head. For 2 days, I disappeared into work. Not to avoid grief, but because grief without structure can become a room with no exits. I built a timeline. Miriam prepared legal notices. Naya documented transactions. The Independent Foundation Board was notified under confidentiality rules. The bank's fraud unit placed monitoring holds. Adrian's wire records were secured. The lab preserved the consent form, metadata, and chain of custody. Vanessa called 31 times. Her first messages were triumphant. "You can stop pretending now. Everyone knows. You should be grateful I gave you the truth." Then her distribution failed to arrive. The messages changed. "What did you do?" "Elise, call me. This is not funny. You have no authority to freeze my money." By the last voicemail, she was screaming, "If you think Dad's paperwork makes you a Morgan, you are even more pathetic than I thought." I saved every message. On Friday morning, Miriam sent Vanessa and Todd formal notice of emergency review, asset freeze, and removal from all fund-authorized roles. She also scheduled a family and board meeting for Sunday afternoon at the Harbor House. Vanessa replied through her attorney that she would attend to correct the continuing fraud of Elise Morgan's status. I smiled when I read that. The DNA test had already backfired. Vanessa just had not felt the heat yet. Vanessa arrived 9 minutes late wearing ivory and gold, which was typical of her. Todd came behind her with sunglasses on his head and a lawyer whose suit cost more than his confidence. My mother was already seated. So were my Uncle Peter, 2 foundation board members, Nia, Miriam, and a representative from the bank's fraud division. Adrian joined by video from Miriam's office in Astoria, visible only to the attorneys until needed. Vanessa looked around the room and laughed. "Is this supposed to scare me?" Miriam answered. No, it is supposed to document you. That was the first time Vanessa looked uncertain. She took the seat across from me anyway. Before you start, she said, looking around the table, I want everyone to remember why we're here. Elise has been controlling assets that should have stayed with actual Morgan blood. I opened the cream-colored folder she had thrown at me and placed the cropped report in the center of the table. This is why we're here, I said. Because you committed too many crimes while trying to prove I was not family. Her attorney objected to the word crimes. Miriam calmly said we would use suspected legal violations pending formal determination. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Nia began with the DNA file. She displayed the cropped page Vanessa had sent to relatives, then the full report obtained directly from the lab. The missing pages showed the forged consent, the lack of chain of custody verification, the confirmation that Vanessa and I shared the same mother, and the disclaimer prohibiting inheritance conclusions based on the report. Aunt Diane whispered, "You cut the report?" Vanessa snapped. The important part was that Samuel wasn't her father. I felt everyone look at me. This time, I did not shrink from it. Samuel was my legal father. He adopted me. He knew before I was born. He chose me with full knowledge. Vanessa laughed. That's what Mom says now? Miriam played Dad's video. His face appeared on the screen, and the room changed instantly. Even Vanessa went still. Dead men, when recorded clearly, are difficult to interrupt. Dad explained the separation, Adrian's acknowledgement, the adoption, and his decision. He did not apologize for loving me. He apologized for allowing secrecy to create a weapon. Then he said, anyone who uses Elise's biology to challenge her place in my family is not defending truth. They are revealing their own character. My Uncle Peter wiped his eyes. My mother silently cried. Vanessa stared at the screen with her jaw tight. When Dad explained the kinship challenge directive, her lawyer leaned toward her and whispered urgently. She shook him off. That document is manipulative, she said. He was sick. Miriam placed capacity statements from 2 physicians and the notarized trust amendment on the table. He was legally competent. Vanessa turned to Ruth. You let him do this? My mother's voice was small but steady. Your father told you not to use this secret. Vanessa slammed her palm on the table. You told me the secret. That admission landed heavily. Miriam's pen stopped moving for 1 second, then continued. Nia moved to Silverline. The transaction chart filled the wall. Blue lines for foundation money, red lines for personal use, yellow lines for Adrian's wire, black lines for payments to the guest house renovation. She explained that Silverline Outreach Strategies received $2.47 million for programs that could not be verified. She showed the mail drop address, the lack of payroll, the false project reports, and the invoices split into amounts just below the board review threshold. Todd whispered, Vanessa. She shot him a look. Don't. Nia showed payments to Todd's credit card, then tuition, then jewelry, then a contractor invoice for Italian tile used in the guest house bathroom Vanessa had claimed was repaired with personal savings. A board member named Caroline pushed back from the table. The fund had to deny 3 housing grants last winter because the emergency budget was depleted. Nia nodded. Yes. On the same week those denials were issued, Silverline paid $38,600 to a luxury travel agency for a trip listed as donor cultivation. Vanessa said it was a fundraising retreat. Nia displayed photos from Vanessa's public social media. A beach resort, champagne, Todd in a cabana, no donors visible. The room did not gasp. It did something worse for Vanessa. It grew quiet in a way that meant people were thinking. Then Miriam introduced Adrian's records. Vanessa's face changed before the first email appeared. She knew what was coming. Adrian's voice played through the speaker. In the voicemail, he asked if the money truly would help me. Vanessa's recorded reply came through impatient and cold. Wire it to Silverline by Friday. Elise never has to know whose blood she carries, and you can tell yourself you finally did something decent. My mother covered her face. Todd stared at Vanessa as if meeting her for the first time. I asked my sister the question I had written down the night before because I wanted to say it without trembling. When you called me another man's mistake, were you thinking about the man you blackmailed or the money you took from him? Vanessa looked at me with hatred. You always wanted to be the injured one. No, I said. I wanted to be left out of your theft. Her lawyer requested a private break. Miriam agreed to 10 minutes. Vanessa used 3. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor and walked into Dad's old office. I followed because I knew she wanted me to. She closed the door behind us and turned without the performance smile. Call it off, she said. No. You have control now. You embarrassed me. You won. I did not win anything in that tent. She stepped closer. You are going to ruin my life because of one sentence? I almost laughed. You forged my consent, stole my DNA, cropped the report, blackmailed Adrian, drained a charitable fund, and used Dad's death as cover. The sentence was just the part you performed. Her expression twisted. You were never supposed to have the company. And you were never supposed to steal from foster kids. She flinched because it was the one phrase that refused to sound like a family dispute. I placed Miriam's proposed civil terms on Dad's desk. Vanessa and Todd would resign from every Morgan entity, return traceable funds, surrender guesthouse rights, waive any future claim to trustee control, provide full records, and cooperate with efforts to restore the Harbor Youth Fund. In exchange, the trust would not pursue additional punitive civil claims beyond restitution, insurance recovery, and whatever authorities decided. Vanessa skimmed the first page and threw it at me. You're kicking me out of my home? The guest house belongs to the trust. I raised my children there. You also renovated it with money meant to house teenagers who had nowhere else to go. Her face went red. Dad chose you because he pitied you. I finally felt something inside me settle. No, Dad protected me because he understood you. I left her in the office. By the time she returned to the meeting, her makeup had not moved, but her certainty had cracked. The board voted unanimously to remove Vanessa and Todd from all positions. Uncle Peter resigned after admitting he had approved payments without review, because Vanessa told him Dad would have wanted flexibility. The bank representative confirmed that suspicious activity reports would be filed. The foundation's insurer requested the full transaction file. Miriam filed the emergency petition that afternoon. Vanessa refused to sign the civil settlement. For 6 days. Then Silverline's accounts were frozen. Todd's lawyer advised him separately, and the State Charity Bureau opened an inquiry. Todd signed first. He produced emails, vendor passwords, and a spreadsheet Vanessa had labeled optics management. Their marriage survived 13 more days. When Vanessa finally signed, she did it with the face of someone who still believed accountability was something being done to her, not something she had summoned. I supervised the guest house inventory with Miriam and a property manager. I did not do it for pleasure. I did it because Vanessa had always treated shared property as a room she could empty, while others apologized for noticing. She packed clothes, family photographs, and a silver tea set my mother had given her. She tried to remove 2 paintings purchased by the foundation for the donor office. The property manager stopped her. At the door, she turned to me. You will never be a real Morgan. I looked past her toward the lake where Dad had once taught me to tie a boat line. I became a real Morgan by doing the one thing you refused to do. What? Protect what he built. That was the last time we spoke for 11 months. The legal process was slower than the family wanted, and faster than Vanessa expected. Forensic accountants traced $2.91 million in improper transfers, including the money from Adrian. Some funds were recovered from frozen accounts. Some came from the sale of Vanessa's condo and Todd's boat. The guest house renovation increased the property value, which the trust recovered by terminating her occupancy rights and selling it to a local preservation group under restrictions Dad would have liked. The Harbor Youth Fund was restored first. That mattered to me more than Vanessa's punishment. The young people who had been denied grants received back payments with apology letters from the board. We created public reporting for every dollar spent. We added independent review, vendor verification, and a policy that no Morgan family member could approve a related party contract. Dad had built the fund to help people leave unstable homes. My sister had turned it into a bank. Putting the money back felt like repairing a door someone had kicked open. Vanessa and Todd were eventually charged with wire fraud, identity theft, charitable fund misuse, and conspiracy. Todd cooperated early and received a reduced sentence with restitution obligations. Vanessa insisted until the final hearing that she had been targeted by a woman who should never have inherited authority in the first place. The judge did not care about her opinion of my blood. He cared about forged consent forms, altered DNA reports, false invoices, misdirected money, and recorded extortion. At sentencing, Vanessa gave a statement about family betrayal. She said I had used my technical control to destroy her children's home. She said Dad had been manipulated. She said Ruth had poisoned the family by hiding the truth. She never said she was sorry to the young people whose grants disappeared. She never apologized to Adrian. She never apologized to me. The judge ordered restitution and sentenced her to prison, followed by supervised release. He also prohibited her from managing charitable funds, serving as trustee, or accessing private medical records without authorization. When the sentence was read, Vanessa turned and looked at me. For 1 second, I saw the girl who had once hidden my piano recital shoes because she did not want Dad to hear me play. Then she was gone, replaced by the woman who still believed she had been robbed, because consequences finally reached her. My mother and I began therapy 2 months after the family meeting. The first session was awful. Ruth cried for 20 minutes and said she had wanted to protect me. I told her protection that leaves a child alone with a weapon is not protection. She tried to explain the shame, the separation, the pressure of the Morgan name, the fear that I would hate her. I listened. Then I told her fear may explain a locked door, but it does not open it. To her credit, she came back, again and again. Slowly, her language changed. She stopped saying, "I was protecting you." She began saying, "I was protecting myself." That was the first honest sentence we could build on. I met Adrian in October at a small restaurant near the coast. He arrived early and stood when I entered. His hair was silver. His hands looked like mine. That detail struck me harder than his face. We talked for 2 hours about architecture, old jazz, my work, his second marriage, and the fact that both of us hated olives. Near the end, he said, "Samuel was a better man than I was at 29, I answered carefully. "He was my father." Adrian nodded. "I know. I am grateful he was." On the first anniversary of the reunion, I returned to Lake Rowan alone. People sometimes ask why I smiled. They think I knew about the trust directive. I did not. They think I knew Dad had planned for it. I did not. I smiled because Vanessa wanted to choose my reaction, and I refused to hand her the last thing she had not already taken. That was the beginning of my freedom. The DNA test backfired, not because it proved Vanessa was wrong about biology. She was right about that narrow fact. Samuel Morgan did not give me his blood. But she was wrong about what blood could decide. She thought DNA could erase adoption, choice, labor, loyalty, and 35 years of fatherhood. She thought humiliation could replace evidence. She thought if the family looked at my origin story, no one would look at her bank records. She forgot who Dad had trained me to be. And she forgot that a test can reveal more than the person ordering it intended. It revealed her forged consent. It revealed the cropped pages. It revealed Adrian's extortion. It revealed the fraud hidden behind charity language. Most of all, it revealed that Vanessa did not believe in family at all. She believed in ownership. She believed in blood only when it helped her collect money, and in secrecy only when it protected her from consequences. I was never another man's mistake. I was Ruth's truth, Adrian's letter, Samuel Morgan's deliberate daughter, and my own person before I was anyone's proof. Vanessa tried to use DNA to push me out of the family. Instead, the DNA test opened the locked door behind her, What waited there was not my shame. It was hers. If someone used a family secret to humiliate you in public, would you stay quiet to preserve peace? Or would you let the full truth come out, even if it changed everything? Share your answer in the comments. Someone reading it may need the courage to stop confusing silence with loyalty. Thank you for listening to this fictional story until the end. It was created for entertainment, reflection, and discussion. May it remind you that family is not proven by blood alone, that privacy should never be used as a weapon, and that the truth does not become cruel just because it finally reaches the people who tried to hide it.